Okay, so let's take a look at exercise 1. Read the questions, look at the chart, then fill in the correct answers. So the title of this chart is Main Types of Volunteer Work for Men and Women in the U.S. 2015. Percentages by type. Okay, so we can see the type of work such as religious, educational, community service, and so on. And we can see the percentage of men and women who volunteer in these types of work. Okay, so I'll give you some time to look at the chart and answer the questions. Okay, so number 1, what question does the chart answer? Okay, and for this one, the answer is, what kinds of volunteer work do men and women do? Okay, so let's take a look at number 2. Women do more volunteer work than men in the area of hospitals and other health. So the answer is letter A. Number 3, men do more volunteer work than women in the area of community service. So letter D. Okay, number 4, the smallest percentage of women volunteers work. Okay, actually, there's a mistake with this sentence. It should say works, not work. Do you know why? Okay, so the verb works should actually be in agreement with the smallest percentage, not volunteers. So let me write this down actually. Okay, so to explain this, I want you to look at the second sentence I wrote. One of my friends is a nurse or are a nurse? Okay, the answer is a nurse because we are talking about one of my friends. So one is a nurse. So same thing with this, this sentence, we need to say the smallest percentage works. So the smallest percentage of women volunteers. So just like of my friends, of women volunteers. So the smallest percentage works. Now it's understandable that the book used the wrong verb because even for me and many native English speakers, this is a common mistake because the last thing that we hear before the verb is, whoops, oh, okay. But anyway, let's keep going. So the smallest percentage of women volunteers works in public safety organizations, letter A. Number 5, the most popular type of volunteer work for men and women is religious, letter B. And number 6, the percentage is closest for men and women who volunteer in environmental and animal care groups, letter C. Okay, so now I want you to make questions for numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, make questions. So let's take a look at number 2 together. Women do more volunteer work than men in the area of hospitals and other health. So we might ask, in what area do women do more volunteer work than men? In what area do women do more volunteer work than men? Okay, so I'll give you some time to complete numbers 3 through 6. Okay, so for number 3, it's the same thing as number 2, but you change women to men. So you can say, in what area do men do more volunteer work than women? Okay, number 4. In what area does the smallest percentage of women volunteers work? Okay, now in this case, we use work because that's the main verb and does is the helping verb. So again, in what area does the smallest percentage of women volunteers work? Number 5, what is the most popular type of volunteer work for men and women? What is the most popular type of volunteer work for men and women? And finally, number 6, in what area is the percentage closest for men and women who volunteer? Okay, I know that's a little tricky, but again, in what area is the percentage closest for men and women who volunteer? Or you can also use the closest because it's superlative, so you can use the. So in what area is the percentage the closest for men and women who volunteer? Okay, so let's take a look at the opposite of that. So the percentage is closest for men and women in environmental and animal care groups, but what about in what area is the percentage? Now you might think farthest because the opposite of close is far, but in this case we would use largest, or we can also use a different word instead of percentage. We might say gap, which means a space between something. So you could say, in what area is the percentage largest for men and women who volunteer? Or in what area is the gap the largest between men and women who volunteer? In what area is the gap the largest between men and women who volunteer? Okay, so now we're going to go back to our students' book on page 69, and we will look at the grammar connections. Okay, so in this lesson, we are going to learn the difference between used to and be used to. So I'm going to play the video and we'll discuss it after that.
Grammar connections. Unit 5, Lesson F. Used to and be used to. Used to. Use used to plus base form of a verb for past situations that are not true now. Used to. Affirmative.
I used to eat a lot of sandwiches as a child, but I don't eat a lot of sandwiches now.
Used to. Negative.
I didn't used to eat meat, but I eat it now.
Used to. Question.
What did you used to eat as a child?
Be used to. Use be used to plus gerund or noun for things a person is accustomed to. Be used to. Affirmative with gerund.
I am used to eating fish for dinner.
Meaning, I often eat fish. Be used to. Negative with gerund.
I am not used to eating desserts.
Meaning, I seldom eat them. Be used to. Affirmative with noun.
Katya is used to American food.
Meaning, she often eats it. Be used to. Negative with noun.
Scott is not used to spicy food.
Meaning, he seldom eats it. Be used to. Question with gerund.
What are you used to eating for dinner?
Check your understanding. Look at the picture and read the heading. Complete the sentence with the correct form of the verb in parentheses.
I used to eat a lot of sandwiches as a child, but I don't eat a lot of sandwiches now.
I didn't used to eat meat, but I eat it now.
What did you used to eat as a child?
I am used to eating fish for dinner.
I am not used to eating desserts.
Katya is used to American food.
Scott is not used to spicy food.
What are you used to eating for dinner?
Let's review.
I used to eat a lot of sandwiches as a child.
I didn't used to eat meat.
I am used to eating fish for dinner.
I am not used to eating dessert.
Katya is used to American food.
What did you used to eat as a child?
What are you used to eating for dinner?
Okay, so if you look at the example again, let's look at the first sentence. I used to eat a lot of sandwiches as a child. So when you say that, that means now you don't. So sometimes you hear people saying, I used to eat a lot of sandwiches as a child, but now I don't. But that's already understood, it's implied, so we don't have to include that second part. And same thing with the second sentence. I didn't used to eat meat, but now I do. And be used to, when you are used to something, so be used to. So when you are used to something, it means that you are familiar with it. It is something that you have done before or you have experienced before, so it's not strange to you. So for example, back in February, early February, we had snow, and some of you said that was your first time seeing snow because you are not used to seeing snow. Or you might say you are used to tropical weather, or you are used to hot and humid weather. So that's a good example of how we can use be used to. Okay, and I also want to make a comment about using be used to. Now, I've told you many times in the past, after to, we don't use ing, but that's only if we are using verbs. So for example, we don't say, I like to swimming. We just say, I like to swim, or I like swimming. We use the gerund. And also, we don't say, I went to shopping last week. We say, I went shopping. We don't say to shopping because we don't use to plus verb plus ing. But if it is a gerund, so if you say, I went shopping, then shopping is not a verb, it is a gerund. So that's why in this case, be used to, we can use a gerund that it looks like a verb. So I am used to eating. So we see to plus verb plus ing, but it's not a verb, it is a gerund. So keep that in mind when you use be used to. Okay, so now I want you to go back to your workbook, and I'm sorry for jumping back and forth a lot this lesson, but I want you to get used to using these expressions before I give you the homework. So let's take a look at page 65, exercise 2. Complete the sentences with affirmative or negative forms of used to and be used to. So a negative form includes not. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Elena used to go to Puerto Rico for her vacation every year. For the last 2 years, she's gone to Alaska, but she doesn't like it. She says, I'm not used to traveling in such a cold place. I prefer the warm weather. So Elena used to go. That's a positive or affirmative form of used to. And not or I'm not used to traveling is a negative form because it includes not. I'm not used to. So this one is a form of be used to. Okay, so let's go ahead and do numbers 2 through 6. They can be a little tricky, so you have to really understand what the sentences are saying. So I will give you some time to complete them. Okay, so number 2. I didn't used to like getting up early, but now I am used to getting up at 5 a.m. and I actually enjoy the morning. Okay? Okay, number 3. Now, Ariana is used to speaking in public, but it used to make her very nervous. Okay, number 4. When Marta first moved to her own apartment, she used to get very lonely. Now, she is used to living alone. In fact, she likes it. Number 5. We didn't used to own a car. We didn't need one. Now we have one, but we aren't used to driving it. And number 6. When Alex lived at home, his mother used to clean his room for him. Now he has his own house and it's a mess. He isn't used to doing his own cleaning. Okay, exercise 3. Write true sentences about yourself. Use the affirmative or negative of be used to. So let's take a look at the example. Stay up late. I'm used to staying up late, or I'm not used to staying up late. So this exercise tells you to use be used to, but you can also practice using used to. So try that for number 1. Use used to. Okay, so you can say, I used to stay up late, or I didn't used to stay up late. So go ahead and complete numbers 2 and 3, and we'll look at it together. Okay, so for number 2, you might say, I'm used to getting up early every day. So that's the affirmative, but maybe you're not used to doing that. So you can say, I'm not used to getting up early every day. And if you want to use used to, you could say, I used to get up early every day, but now I don't. Or you could say, I didn't used to get up early every day, but now I do. So this is very interesting because many of you or many of your children used to get up early every day for school, but maybe now they get up a little later because they don't have to catch the bus. Or you could say, my children are used to getting up early every day, but now they don't have to. Okay, number 3. I'm used to speaking English all the time. But probably for many of you, you might say, I'm not used to speaking English all the time. In fact, you might say, I'm used to speaking my own language at home. I'm used to speaking my own language all the time, but I have to practice speaking English. Or you could use used to. I used to speak English all the time, or I didn't used to speak English all the time, but now I have to, or now I do. Okay, so now I want you to go back to your student's book on page 69. Student's book, page 69. Okay, so we're going to look at that game, but we're not going to play the game using the coins. We're just going to practice answering the questions and having conversations with our family members. Or as I mentioned before, you can just write your answers. But I want you to do this for homework actually. So if you look at the first question, it says start here. So that first question says, what did you used to do for fun as a child? So this is a form of used to. So you could say, I used to play outside as a child. And you can even compare yourself with your children. So you could say, I used to play outside as a child, but my child or my children play games on their tablets. Okay, so you could say, I used to play outside as a child, but my children play games on their tablets. Okay, and then let's look at the next question. How often are you used to going to the supermarket? So this is a form of be used to. So you might say, I'm used to going to the supermarket once a week. Now, this is also very interesting because we are practicing social distancing. So maybe many of you are used to going to the supermarket once a week, but now you have to go once every 2 weeks. Or maybe you are ordering groceries online and having them delivered to you. Or maybe you are eating takeout a lot. So this question is very applicable for our situation. Okay, and the next question, how did you used to get to school as a child? So you could say, I used to walk to school as a child. Or as I mentioned, you can compare yourself with your children and you could say, I used to walk, but my children take the school bus. Okay, so the next question, what noises are you used to hearing in your neighborhood? So you might say, I am used to hearing dogs barking or dogs bark. Okay, so as I mentioned, I want you to do these questions on your own or with a partner, with one of your family members. But for homework, I want you to write one answer from each color, each row. So there are 4 rows, so you don't need to do all of the questions, just pick 4. So 1 from each row, okay? And then you can send those to my email address. But also, the second part of your homework is to turn to page 67, also in your student's book, and write a paragraph about someone you know who made a difference in your life or someone else's life. So this is actually exercise 2, okay? So you can use this chart to help you, but I want you to write a paragraph and email that paragraph to me as well. Okay, so those 2 things. Page 69, 4 sentences from exercise 2A, and then also page 67, the paragraph. All right, so that's the end of our lesson, and I will see you next time.